morning. Welcome to Let's Get Growing Facebook Live. I'm Jeff Mason, your host. We're here in the greenhouse today. It's a beautiful, rainy, 6-degree December day. Just what you want at this time of year. But we actually are thinking ahead to spring and starting to think about spring containers, that sort of thing, what we're going to do. And we're going to have a quick look at some succulent propagation. It's a pretty easy thing to do with most succulents, as most people have probably tried. But, you know, this is sort of the time you start thinking about doing it, because you're starting to take cuttings now, whether they're stem cuttings, leaf cuttings. You're going to have plants ready to use in containers in spring. And if you haven't been putting your succulents outside for the summer, you're really missing out, because it really is the best way to grow them. They love being outside for the summer. They love the sun. They love the fresh air. Then you can bring them in for the winter, and you just need to maintain them. You don't need to really try to force grow them. So we're going to look at echeverias mostly, but I'm sure it'll cross over to a few other things. Echeverias are one of the more popular succulent families to grow, and they can be one of the more expensive ones too, and a bit slower growing. So it's one that if you can produce some of your own, it's a much easier and more inexpensive process. So we do a lot of echeverias here in the greenhouse. Canadian Succulents uses a lot of plants. I think we propagated probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5,000 echeverias this past season, and likely we'll start doing more. And I'm just going to give you a rundown of how we do it. So we often keep varieties in stock baskets. This guy here is one of our stock baskets. It's a pretty good prolific one. This is Fred Ives, and it's an excellent echeveria, easy growing, fast growing, very green right now, but in the summer colors up really nicely. This is one of our stock baskets that we'll take cuttings from all year round. At this time of the year, we're sort of going to probably come in and take these big heads off. They'll go into like a 4-inch pot, 5-inch pot, but we tend to want to grow things for like the 3-inch pot size. So we would take cuttings off the smaller heads and get rid of some of these funny long stems and things like that, because that's sort of what your succulents will look like if you use them outside and you've brought them indoors for the winter. They're starting to look kind of scruffy. Some of the echeverias, the smaller ones, really just propagate themselves. As you can see, this is our basket of Echeveria prolifica. It's prolifica for a good reason. It gets these long runners, which is unusual for echeverias, but it does have that stoloniferous growth habit. So you can see these come off the plant naturally, and then would grow across the ground and then form a little head at the end and root there, and then continue forming a colony. But you can see just masses and masses of roots there, that really all you need to do with these ones. These are super easy. We just attach an inch of stem or so, and we can put them into a pot, and they're ready to go right away. Look at that. I mean, they're fully rooted and ready. Super easy. They'll also grow from leaves without any trouble. Prolific is a great name for that one. But what happens, you know, as you get your older specimen ones, this is the kind of thing that's going to happen. You're going to get a long stem. You got a rosette over here that's looking pretty decent, but needs some work. Really, you just need to fix these up. We got this one, and then I got this one up here that has done the same thing. It's a lot of stem and not much else. This one's got a flower spike on it right now, so I probably won't touch it for the moment, because the flowers are very interesting on Echeverias if you ever see them happen. They're kind of fun to look at. Indoors, though, be careful because Echeveria flower heads will attract aphids like crazy. So if you've got aphids in the house, leave your heads on until they get full of aphids and then cut them off and throw them out. But this is the kind of Echeveria we want to talk about and do something with, because we can really, oh, it's not going to hang there. We can really do a lot with that Echeveria right now and have a good plants for next spring. So we're going to go with this guy here first. This is one of the roughly ones called Desert Rose. It really needs some serious work. So you can see we're going to go back underneath the plant here. And you can see there's lots of dead leaves. So we'll clear those out. But we've got a decent stem piece here. So we're going to go in and cut that off. So there we go. There's our head. This stem is not useless. This stem will continue to produce. It's got this small head on it. We'll probably leave it there for now. But this head, everywhere where a leaf was, you know, that old leaf node area we talk about a lot, or leaf scar area, you can see them on the stem here. These Echeveria stems have the potential to grow a new plant at every node. Just like if you were pruning a shrub and encouraging more branching, Echeverias are exactly the same. So we'll take our Echeveria head. Now, this one's a bit messy because it's got a very curved stem the way it was sitting. But what we're going to do is we're going to take off some of these old leaves. And you can usually gently break them off. Smaller ones break off easy, but these bigger ones don't like to give up their leaves so fast. And when I start taking off some of these lower leaves, and you do want to be careful of it, and I'll tell you why in a second. When I start taking off some of these lower leaves, you start to see that I'm exposing stem, and already at nodes there are new roots growing. So we're going to use those new roots to our advantage. I'm going to try and get more of these old leaves off the bottom here that are going to cause us a problem, like that one I just broke. So you can see here we've got this curled stem with lots of old leaves. I'm going to cut a bit of that off just to make it a little more tidy. So we'll get rid of that little hunk of stem there. And then I think we're probably close enough. Well, I'll take that leaf off that I broke. And we're probably close enough now that what we'll do with an Echeveria that's got this thick of a stem, and we've broken all these leaf stems off, we have to let those calluses, those cut areas dry. So this Echeveria is just going to sit, can sit anywhere really, can sit on a table, can sit anywhere where it can dry. I usually take a flat, turn it upside down, and sit them in it so they are held up. You can even do it with a pot. Just sit it in an empty pot. And then it's sitting in the position you want it to be. Let it dry for about a week or so. And then you can just set this on a pot of soil mix. You don't need to bury it. Just sort of set that stem in, push that stem in a little bit. You know, it's going to root all over this stem. So just push it into some soil, it'll root, and it'll be ready to go and be a beautiful plant for the spring. So we'll set it aside, upright so it's not going to get bent over. Now the neat thing about Echeverias, and really everything in sort of the Crassulaceae family or the Crassula family, which many succulents that we grow come from, is that they have an amazing ability to grow from even a leaf. And these big guys, although the big ones are a little more tricky to do, these will grow from leaves as well. You can see here, well, here, I'll pull out a couple of our little ones. So right now they're just sitting in trays, just thrown into trays. We'll go through them shortly, and we'll sort out ones that are starting to do this. Because just sitting in the air, they will start to grow leaves. They will start to grow young baby plants. And you can see there's a root already growing there. Right now, these little plants are growing off the moisture in that leaf, which is great. As soon as they start to produce their own little roots, we then just set them into trays. This is a very shallow tray with a little bit of soil in it. This is really all they need. And then what happens is the leaves keep growing. You can see one here, it's well rooted. The leaves keep growing the baby plants. And we'll normally leave them in here until this stage. So here's the leaf that we started with. It's completely dried up and died away. And here's a wonderful little cluster of heads that are fully rooted. So that can be potted up into a 1.5, 2.5 inch pot or whatever, or just allowed to grow on in a tray. It doesn't really matter. That'll keep increasing. Now what happens here is you've really got more than one head. This one actually, from a quick look, has 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 heads are going to grow from this echeveria, from one leaf. So you can keep that together if you want, or we take the next step and we get into a plant that looks something like this guy. Let's see, where's one here. Well, you can see, yeah, this one. So what you'll end up with is something like this, multi-headed. If you're growing for yourself, these are beautiful to pot up, strawberry jars, anything like that. But when they get to this size, if you like the individual head look, you can just go in, take those heads off, and there we go. We've got a head that's already starting to root, actually. This is very common. So what we would do with these, again, we've made a cut here. So we'll let that sit for a couple of days. But again, we'll leave them upright. So we'll set them in a tray so they're sitting upright so they don't get all twisted. Always try not to touch the rosettes of most echeverias. Rosettes of most echeverias have a nice powdery coating on them. And if you touch them, you wipe it off. So be very careful when you're touching your echeverias. Try to keep your fingers under the leaves as best you can. So we'll go through that. We'll take these little ones. They'll go into a tray like this tray here. I don't know if you can see this tray, Laura.
We cannot, but...
Okay, so they'll go into a tray like this, and they'll just sit in there. We'll put 32 in there. Even if they're single heads, at some point, we'll cut the heads off and allow the stems to branch. So this is what we've done with the tray beside it. These ones all had an individual head cut off a few weeks ago. And you can see now that we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4 good sized heads on that. Plus, we could now go in and take some of these leaves off and start this process all over again. So we'll set those leaves in there. We could just do that. And then there we go. We've got a 4-headed echeveria. Easy peasy. Now the one trick to doing the leaves, and like I said, the smaller ones tend to lose the leaves easier. Echeveria prolifica, it'll drop leaves even if you shake it. But the bigger ones, you need to make sure that you are getting sort of the whole leaf. I'll bring that up close. You want to make sure you're getting the entire leaf. There's a bit of a little leaf scar there. That's what you want. The node, so the part where the new shoot is going to grow from, is this little calloused area right here. If you pull a leaf off and it breaks, chances are nothing's going to happen to that leaf. Not impossible, but odds are nothing's going to happen to that leaf. So you need to make sure that you have that whole little sort of half moon shape with that little calloused area there, because that's where your new plants are growing from. As I said, it's a lot harder with these big ones to get that. They really don't like to give up their leaves as easily. See, I ripped this one a little bit, but I've still got some of that area here. I might be able to salvage those, so we'll give it a try. We'll know soon enough. This one came off nicely, but the leaf is in such bad shape, there's probably not enough life in there to get a plant. So it makes these big ones a lot trickier. We'll try a couple of leaves. We'll hang on to them and see what happens. But the big ones do get a bit trickier because you often have to do those from head chopping. So we'll let that one grow a bit more and hopefully get a couple of more heads off that stem. So as I said, you can really do this with any sort of, almost every succulent. Crassulas, there's a little crassula tetragona that fell in the tray, rooted itself. Sedums, all your jade plants, things like that, all work really, really well. Even things like your string of pearls and your string of beads, your variegated string of pearls, which is so popular these days, you can even do the same thing. Now what we do with those a little bit different, we'll just take those long strings and you can see there's already roots growing from nodes. So if you wanted to, you could take an individual node, an individual leaf on a node, just like that, and that would be enough to propagate that string of pearls. We can drop it right in there, get it in some soil, and it'll grow. But more often than not, what we do is we take stem pieces with several leaves on it, press those into the soil, and then they'll root all along those from every leaf, and then you get bigger plants much faster. But they still root the same way. You do want a little tiny bit of stem though, with things like the seniculums. As we get into other succulents can be grown from leaves as well. Haworthias, for example, if you've got Haworthias that are slow, some Echeveria leaves in there. If you've got Haworthias that are slow, these ones aren't, but if you've got varieties that are slow, you can do them exactly the same way. Now this one is popping off really well. This is one of the zebra ones, but it's a variegated one. You can see the striping. So you can actually just go in and take these. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to take these off. And these will all have some roots on them already. So they're quite easy to do. Clean off the dead leaves. Again, because we're making wounds on the stem, not a bad idea to let them sit for a few days while they dry and callus. So we just get empty trays again, upright so they don't get twisted out of shape. But I'm going to work my way through this Haworthia. Get these pups out of here. These are all great pups. The variegated Haworthias are so fun. And you can sell them for a decent buck as well. Some of them are getting so squished up they want to be out of the pot. They're getting squished in the pots, so we're going to remove those two. Every one of them pretty much has a root on it already. So you can take all of those, you can take all these off. They've all got a root or a bit of root on them. And then you've got a nice Haworthia you can repot because they hold their shape well. But again, they have that same stem. And if you take some of these old leaves off that are kind of yucky, you can expose that stem. And if you want a Haworthia to reproduce a lot, you've got that bare stem. You want to get more and more of this one because it's shooting off variegated pups. Just go right in and you can see the crown here. So remember, there's a stem in there. Go into the crown and cut that crown right out. What that is going to do, because we've cut off the growing tip, it's going to cause this plant to shoot out a whole bunch more babies. You can then take the top, like we did with the Echeverias, take off some leaves, get a bit of a stem base there, reroot that Haworthia, and start the process all over again. Now, what's interesting is if you got some of those Haworthia leaves off and they're good and healthy, don't just throw them out. They don't do it easily, but they will grow from leaf cuttings. You can do Haworthias, you can do aloes, you can do everything in that family as long as you get the leaves off cleanly from the trunk, just like the Echeverias. It's going to take a little while. It's not 100% guaranteed, but a lot of these leaves here that are really good and firm that I've taken off and gotten that bit of tissue that's right there, then we might be successful. So we'll set those over away, we'll set them into a tray and just let them see what they do. As I said, the head's going to root. This, although it looks pretty miserable right now, is going to be a propagation machine. This is going to send off all kinds of new growth around where the pups came off, and maybe even up around this top of the stem. So you can do that with all of your Haworthias, Echeverias, aloes, things like that, especially if they get stretched and looking terrible. Often at this time of the year and through the winter they do. So it's a great time to start attacking your succulents and preparing for spring. We got any questions, Laura, for today?
No questions. A number of happy holiday wishes.
No questions.
Merry Christmas wishes.
Happy holidays to everybody. This will be our last show until the new year. We'll be back after the winter break. So January 14th we'll be back. January 14th we'll be back. So enjoy your holidays. If you're looking for that last minute gardener gift, we are almost sold out on our Scotland trip. The Highlands of Scotland has got maybe 4 seats left on it. It's going to be fantastic. The gardens we've lined up are looking better and better every day. But also don't forget our Chelsea trip in May, 9 days in May. If you want to add to it at the beginning or after to do more on your own, you can absolutely do that. But the Chelsea Flower Show, of course, a bucket list for many, many people. The world's most famous flower and garden show. Looking really forward to going. The trip's about half sold, so don't delay too long. We've got some fantastic gardens lined up for that trip. We'll be visiting Modesfont, where Graham Stewart Thomas's antique rose collection is. A fantastic collection of roses that predate all of the David Austins and everything. It was actually what the David Austins were based on. Tom Stewart Smith's garden. We'll see a lot of him on this trip because he's doing a feature garden at Chelsea, and we'll be visiting his own garden where he has built a horticultural encyclopedia of plants from A to Z in the garden, with about 1,300 different species of perennials, so you can really grow. It's an area for him to grow and show clients what plants look like and how they grow, to use them in his designs and things like that. So that'll be a great trip. Plus, we're trying to get into High Grove, but we don't know about High Grove until about February, so we can't guarantee that one. But it would be great to see King Charles Garden again. It was wonderful the first time we got there. So look at that trip. If you're interested in the trips, email Marjorie at masonhousegardens.com, and she can fill you in with lots more information. So Chelsea in May, Highlands of Scotland in early August. That's it for me. Have a happy holidays, a happy new year, and we'll see you on January 14th with more Let's Get Growing Facebook Live.